Good afternoon YouTube, it's Hugh from Financially Free by 40, and in this video I'm going to be answering a question from one of my subscribers, Kevin Hughes. Kevin asks, any chance you could share my learning process from books please? Well, thanks for the question, Kevin, and yes, of course I can share that process. But I would also add this isn't just for books. I do this for podcasts and also YouTube videos that I find really interesting. So I'll use your example that you asked for books though to kick us off. And the book I will use is this beast. I'm going to be doing a proper review of this book because for me this is one of the best books I have ever read in my life. It's an absolute beast. Look at the size of that compared to my head, and I've got a big head. You can see it's quite thick. It's like a Bible. Charlie Munger's The Wit and Wisdom of Charlie Munger. Poor Charlie's Almanac is the name of it. This is absolutely amazing, and I think it cost me 55 quid. 55 quid. Most expensive book I've ever bought, but totally worth it. Now, Charlie is reputed to be one of the most intelligent people in the world, according to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, the people that know him, and you can tell just from the way he writes. I have to admit, when I was going through this book, as I think I showed in my morning ritual video, some of it I actually have to reread some of the paragraphs a couple of times to kind of digest it. So this book is a great example of how I go through this process, because I needed to follow this to kind of ingrain what Charlie shares. So one of the most famous bits of this book is Charlie's cognitive biases. I think there are 25 in total that all human beings, Charlie believes, are fallible of these mental biases, and he believes the way to overcome that is to understand all of these and have that in your head and do your very best to keep awareness of them as and when they happen, because they will happen. If you don't think about it, you will fall for it, and he said he will even fall from it. So the idea is not to not fall for it, because that's going to happen. It's just to minimize the chances that you're going to fall into these mental biases and make mistakes in your life. So the learning process. During this, in my morning routine, what I would do is read one of the 25 biases at least in the morning. So I'd give the whole page or whatever it was, which took about 2 to 5 minutes to read. Sometimes I'd reread certain paragraphs if they did take a little bit of getting used to. I gotta be honest, every other page or every third page, I'd have to look up a word that he said and just to find out what it meant. This is, I'm not kind of, I don't want to be over-egging how complicated this book is. I think it's just me that I'm not that well educated or great with English, so I just had to re-understand what he was trying to say. So once I'd had a read through and understood roughly what he was saying, I then got my pad out. Now for me, this isn't for everyone. I'm just sharing what I do. Hopefully you can pick up some tips from this, but for me, I need to write it down to really ingrain it. Now if you'd wrote maybe say 10 paragraphs in one cognitive bias point, I might write out maybe 7 or 8 of those paragraphs. I wouldn't necessarily write all of it. I'd take what I could from it. I've personally tried doing it shorthand, and I've also tried writing out my own version, and I've also tried writing out word for word. And I found just from doing this exercise, I found a lot more value from writing out word for word, especially with someone like Charlie who doesn't fluff in his writing. He gets to the point, but sometimes his points are so detailed or so complex that it's very hard to kind of. I was trying to like shorten what he was saying, but it was losing the impact of it. So I just, in the end, just stuck to writing exactly word for word what he put down. Now, one of the points that Charlie brings up in how to learn is doing a 3-step process, what they use in medical school, which is see one, do one, teach one. So the idea being that you see the process like an operation or like a procedure being done, you then have a go at doing it, and then you teach someone how to do it. And throughout that process, then you can become much more adept and understand that process fully. So I try and emulate that as much as I can. So I read through it, I kind of see what he's talking about. I try to consider it in my life and think of an example of where that's come up. I then ingrain it by writing it down. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily I'm going to remember it word for word, but because I've condensed it somewhat, maybe 7/10 of the paragraph, and this is a lot easier to carry than this whole Bible, I'll have this around when I go traveling or at my table when I'm going to bed, and I'll just flick it out and just have a scan through it. And also what I've been doing more recently in my shortened morning rituals is getting this book out and just reading a couple of pages, because the knowledge in this stuff is unbelievable. There's about 10 books worth, 5 YouTube videos, 3 podcasts, all in 3/4 of this little notebook. So this is a really powerful notebook, and I've got another one that I finished previously that I keep on my side, and I'll always keep, I'll continue doing this process as long as I can. So I try to, by writing it down, it enables me to have quick access to this great information and to keep reminding myself. And then what I do is annoy Lou with it. So later on in the evening, when she comes back, I will share with her my newfound knowledge of a certain topic. And this is my way of teaching. She's now totally used to me doing this, and I wouldn't even be surprised if she turns off 100%, doesn't listen to a word I'm saying. But she's told me that she does listen. She does get a lot of value from it, because this stuff I find really interesting. I think a lot of it she finds interesting too. But one of the reasons that I've said that I really enjoy talking to her is just so I can, by telling her, I try and do it in a teaching way as well. So I'm trying to read it out and then give examples to help her understand what it means as well. And that really helps for me to ingrain it. So that's my simple process. It's a case of reading through the notes. I haven't done it in Charlie's book, but I would also encourage you, because I've done it in other books, to make notes, highlight and write in the book as well. These are books for life, and if there are certain paragraphs that really resonate with you, highlight it, underline it, and make a big deal about it. I do that in my book instead now, but I have done that process before and it works. I write it down because it's a way of rereading what I've read, and it means that rather than reading 10 paragraphs, in some cases I might just read 5, the really high impact ones for me, and I can condense all that information down, read it at any time when I'm traveling or next to my bed, and I'll then take this book with me, read the key points to Lou, who listens, or maybe you could just read it to yourself on a YouTube video or something to ingrain it, and or tell a friend, tell a family member, something like that about this thing that you shared, reading from your notes to try and ingrain it further. So that's my process for learning. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments below. Thank you again, Kevin, for the question. And I suppose to anyone else as well, if you've got any other questions on anything that I do, drop them down in the comments, send me a message, and I'll do my best to answer it. See you in the next one.